Oh, sorry. Hold on a second.
Channukah Sameach, everyone. Last night, what Channukah. So we started speaking last night about the contradiction, paradox, however you want to call it, between the two elements of Channukah. On the one hand, now uBeito, which is intrinsically tied to the house, to the home, to the private domain, yet at the same time, Pirsum Nisa, publicizing the miracle, that is a fundamental and critical element of Channukah and of the mitzvah. We see many different ways. And the question is, if Pirsum Nisa is so important, so then why is it tied down to the home? It really restricts it, it limits it. And furthermore, as we saw in the Gemara, which tells us already we get to a stage in history where Shata Sakana Manichal Shulchano V'dayo, that the Channukah moves inside. It's no longer outside. It's now inside the home, and there is no Pirsum Nisa at all. That element is completely lost. Maybe it still exists to a certain extent, or not, or in other ways. So how does this all work? So I thought maybe the best way to understand this is by reading through the last three halachot in the Rambam of Hilchot Channukah. The Rambam brings at the very end of Hilchot Megillah and Channukah, which is brought together in one book, the first two chapters of Megillah, next two chapters of Channukah. But chapter 4, the last three halachot, the Rambam says as follows. He says, Mitzvat ner Channukah, mitzvah chavivai ad meod. So the mitzvah is a very, very precious mitzvah. I always remember my Rosh Hashiva saying, reading out this halakha and saying, Rambam lo machalek tzionim lemitzvot. Rambam doesn't give out points to the mitzvot. Yet he tells us, chavivai ad meod. V'tzarich adam lizaher ba. Person has to be very careful. Kedei lodia hanes. So there you already see. Kedei lodia hanes. That's Pirsum Nisa. Ulosif b'shevach ha'el v'olaya lo al hanisim she'asa. And to add praise to Hashem for the and thanksgiving for the miracles which He has done. And now, afilu ein lo ma yochal ela min tzedakah. I mentioned this briefly last night. Even if a person has nothing to eat, a person is dependent on tzedakah, dependent on charity. Nonetheless, shoel, you should borrow or mocher ksuto, or sell the clothes of your back. V'lokech shemen v'neirot umadlik, because you have to fulfill this mitzvah. Even if you have to beg, even if you have to give up your clothes, you have to go and make every effort to fulfill this mitzvah. Why? Because Pirsum Nisa. Because you have to publicize the miracle, because it is a mitzvah chaviva. Okay. That's halacha yud bet. Next halacha, says the Rambam. Now following on logically. He says, Areisha eino ela pruta. So a person has, again, it's unfathomable for most of us, thankfully, but a person only has one pruta. That's all they have. Completely destitute. Ulefanav, kiddush Shabbat v'adlakat ner Chanukah. And so you have the choice. You can afford either to buy wine for kiddush or a candle for ner Chanukah. So which one takes preference? Says the Rambam, Makdim shemen adlik ner Chanukah layayin lekiddush hayom. I just told you that mitzvat ner Chanukah, you have to give up everything that you can for it. So obviously, that comes first. Mitzvat ner Chanukah comes before even the mitzvah of kiddush hayom. And he gives an explanation. He says, both of them are mitzvot rabbanan, and therefore mutav lakdim ner Chanukah shesh bo zichron hanes. Second time there it's mentioned that it's better to, or one is required to give precedence to ner Chanukah first, because it has zichron hanes. It has a remembrance of the miracle, or Pirsum hanes, we might say, publicizing the miracle. Now, next halacha, the final halacha in Hilchot Chanukah of the Rambam. So following along, so we said if you have nothing, you fulfill ner Chanukah anyway. If it's between ner Chanukah and kiddush hayom, it's ner Chanukah, it comes first because it's Pirsum hanes, zichron hanes. So he carries on, says, what's the next case? Haya lefanav ner beito v'ner Chanukah. So you have the candle. It's also a very interesting expression, ner beito, right? It doesn't say ner Shabbat, but ner beito. You have the candle of one's home, the candle of Shabbat, and ner Chanukah. Now you all know what the answer is, but if you didn't know what the answer is, so following along from what we've just said, what would we expect? Which one comes first? Logically, we'd expect it to say ner Chanukah comes first. The same way ner Chanukah is Pirsum hanes, it takes preference. But here the Rambam says, based on the Gemara, Yalefanav ner beito ner Chanukah, or ner beito v'kiddush hayom, he throws in as well, or if it's between ner Shabbat and kiddush, still ner beito kodim. The candle of Shabbat comes first. Why? Mishum shlom beito, because of shalom bayit. And now he explains שהרי השם נמחק לעשות שלום בין איש לאשתו. Hashem's name is erased in case of the sotah in order to bring about shalom between a man and wife. גדול השלום שכל התורה ניתנה לעשות שלום בעולם. How great is peace. The whole Torah was given in order to bring peace in the world. שנאמר דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. And with that, the Rambam concludes the Sefer, concludes Sefer Zmanim with this idea of shalom. But what we see, and again, it's very, very familiar, this idea. Ner Shabbat, or Ner Chanukah, Ner Shabbat Kodem, Ner Beito, because of Shalom Bayit. But let's just think about what we just said. If Pirsum Hanes is so important, and it's so critical, and it's the essence of the mitzvah, and it's the essence of everything, to the extent, again, where did the Rambam get the halacha from? That you have to sell, you have to go and beg, or you have to sell the clothes of your back in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah. Says the Magid Mishnah, he got it from the mitzvah of four cups, Arba Kosot Yain, where there it's the same thing. It's also because of Pirsum Hanes. Pirsum Hanes is this precept that is all overpowering and overarching, and you have to publicize everything, and it even takes precedence over Kiddush, etc. So we'd expect to come to, Ner Shabbat. Ner Shabbat is inside the house. Ner Chanukah is outside. It's Pirsum Hanes. We'd expect it to say Ner Chanukah comes first. Answers the Rambam, no. Again, the Rambam didn't make up it's not his chiddush that Ner Beito comes first. It's his chiddush in the way that he ordered the halachot and the way he juxtaposed them together. But perhaps the message is this, and it's really an obvious message when you think about it. But what he's trying to say, and what this whole idea of Pirsum Hanes, of Ner Ishu Beito, is coming to teach us, is that what are we publicizing outside? You know, often people try and go out, and we want to show things to the world. But if your Shalom Bayit isn't okay, if things are broken inside the house, so you're going to go out and be sending out the messages. What good is it? That your Pirsum Hanes is not going to do anything if you can't take care of what's going on inside the house first, or you can't take care of Shalom Bayit. And maybe the idea, that is why the Pirsum Hanes, the Pnei Yoshua we saw yesterday, he said that why is it that there's no, it seems to be that the mitzvah is not tied to the individual, but it's tied to the household. He said it's because of Pirsum Hanes, because Pirsum Hanes has to be outside the house, close to Rosh Hashanah, and that's why we tie the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah to the house. And we said, why can't you just do Pirsum Hanes? You could do it elsewhere. You could do it in a much greater way, much greater effect. No, because what is the war about? What is the battle of Chanukah that it was then? And it's unbelievably poignant how relevant it is right now. It's a fight over the home. It's a fight over the bayit. It's a fight over kedushat bayit, right? On a micro and a macro level. On the macro level, we talk about, mentioned on Shabbat, the Rambam as well talks about how after Chanukah, Chazra Malchut Yisrael Yetzirah 200 Shana, a fight over sovereignty in this land. Whose home is it? Whose bayit is it? It's ours, it's not theirs. But on a macro level as well, the Gemara tells us what happened. How did the whole Chanukah story start? It started with a violation of the sanctity of the Jewish home. Of the Yevanim coming along and saying any Jewish girl is going to get married. Before that, before you enter that bond, that marital bond, has to go, and the emperor, the ruler, whatever, can go and have his way with her. Things haven't changed. We're still fighting the same battle now as we were fighting then. It's about the sanctity of the home, the kedushat habayit, and therefore Chazal say we want to go and you want to publicize the miracle. You go out and publish light in the streets or wherever it is. That's all very nice. But that's not the ultimate Pirsum that we are trying to achieve and trying to create. That Pirsum has to be connected to the house, connected to the bayit, and you have those candles that are outside in a way that's showing this is the Jewish home. This is the sanctity of the Jewish home. That is the miracle. That is what we are publicizing, and that is what is continuing, and that is what ultimately brings victory in this battle. And that's why Shalom Bayit is before you can get to Pirsum Hanes, you have to have Shalom Bayit. And that together can be the ultimate Pirsum Hanes and the ultimate publicizing of this miracle. I'll just share with you a brief piece from Rav Kook. It says a beautiful idea as well. He says, we said what happens when we want to publicize the miracle outside, far and wide, let the whole world know, scream it from the rooftops. But B'shat HaSakana, said the Gemara, B'shat HaSakana menichal shulchano v'dayo. There are times when outside the message cannot be spread. There are times when outside the message cannot be heard. So you take it inside. First and foremost, we have to hear for ourselves. We have to strengthen within ourselves. And that Pirsum Hanes, ultimately, many poskim write that nowadays when you light the candle, inside the Pirsum Anes is for Bnei Abayit. It's for those that are within the home and publicizing it there. That's in Shata Sakana. Obviously, when it's possible to take that light and spread it out and radiate it as far and wide as can be. But first and foremost, we have to know where it starts, where it begins, and the centrality of the home, and that is the central message of Channukah and of these candles. Rabbi Hanania ben Akash, Omer, Tzakadosh Baruch Hu, Zakot Yisrael, Yifrach B'Alem Torah Mitzvot, Shnei Ma'adanei